Hey everyone, so in this part we want to create an effect like this, okay? So this effect is made out of this half sphere that contains this cool looking shader where we are using the same flow map that used for the clouds, okay? And then the cloud shader itself that we previously had, we will need to add to it this emissive effect, all right? So let's start first by, all right, let's start by creating that sphere, okay? And let me make sure to revert the material here to what we originally had, okay? So just gonna move this to this one, all right? Now, next part, I'm gonna open Houdini and create sphere. All right, like I'm gonna use we can create a geometry node and then create this lab sphere generator. If you don't use Houdini, well, you should be able to create this in whatever software you use for 3D modeling, right? It just you would need to have the UVs and the geometry set up same way. So here I can use this cut sphere, right? Then I'm gonna move it somewhere here, I guess. Maybe just like this should be fine, right? And then I'm gonna say labs auto UV. All right, and I'm just gonna switch to UV viewport and make sure to increase this so it gets unwrapped as one single region like this, right? Now I want to like encode some vertex colors in this, right? Like for example, I'm gonna say distance from border, right? So that's the first information you want to save. And I want this to be something like that, right? All right, so I can use this later on, like for making sure the borders blends into the background, right? You don't want to have a straight line like this in the sky, right? You need it to blend, right? So I'm gonna make sure I save this into the red channel of the vertex colors. And initially the vertex colors will be black. All right, gonna copy this. I'm gonna say vertex color of the red channel equal the distance from the border. All right, so now in the vertex colors, you have this. Okay. Right, next step, if you want, you can just grab the vertex colors at the very top, right? So we can use this zero distance from border, and then maybe another one will be distance from center, right? and then I'm gonna say smooth. Let's visualize distance from center. I'm gonna say visualize distance from center. Make sure you don't want to smooth the position, just this, right? All right, let's leave it like this. Then gonna color at the green shell gonna be distance from center. Okay. So next step, since we are only interested by the inner parts of this half sphere, we will need to reverse or flip the polygons, right? And essentially make sure the norms are pointing inward. So to do that, we need to use the reverse node. All right. And then I'm gonna use normal soften. So this will recalculate the normals while smoothing it, right? So this is how it looks, right? So this is correct. This is what we need. Now, one additional thing, I want to remap some attributes here. Like, for example, I want to remap this distance from border. Make sure it's between 0 and 1. Okay, so that's fine. And then this one, distance from center, we need to remap it between 0 and 1 in the output. Okay, so let me just visualize this. All right. Make sure this is what we need. Okay. Yeah, sounds right. So let me just revert to this. And now we have this. Okay. So with this in place, we can move this to Unreal. So I'm gonna just say FBX output. Make sure to set convert units enabled here, and then I'm gonna save it in a folder called Clouds tutorial named half sphere, right? So this is the FBX file. Now one last thing to note is if you're not a Houdini user, right? So you should be able to replicate this, but honestly, like in a traditional modeling tools like 3ds Max, Maya, Blender, or whatever you're using, if you wanted to do this with such very flexible control, you wouldn't be able to do that, right? So as advice for anyone in the game industry, if you have Houdini in your tool set, it will save you an insane amount of time, and it will give you the possibility to do things in the past might have been at least maybe for most people might look like some magic stuff. You know, there is a lot of tricks in games they use and a lot of shaders stuff that can rely heavily on Houdini. Okay, so this is something to consider. Now we're gonna import this to our project. Let me just drag it directly like this. When you're in the import option, make sure the vertex colors option is set to replace, so we can import our custom vertex colors. Now let's say show vertex colors, and now you get exactly what we did in Houdini, right? You have your red channel containing, the distance from the border, which will be used for opacity or deliberate opacity, and the yellow part can be used later on for an effect for this area, for example, right? We might not really need it because as you remember, the flow map already comes with some masks and stuff like that, right? But we have this here anyway. Probably we'll use this, right? We will see. Right? Now, if you drag this into your scene, you will see it's quite too small, right? So, would be cool if the initial scale is at least 1,000 times larger, right? Or maybe, yeah, 1,000 times larger is realistic because we're gonna be using this in storms and stuff like this in the sky, so this needs to be quite big, right? Right, now that's useful. Now what I'm gonna do is just set my camera speed to 8 and increase this something like that, right? And I will try to position my camera somewhere here and then gonna move this half sphere to view, right? I'm gonna disable the rotation and just scale it up like this. All right, make sure it's almost in the middle, right? You can scale it down a bit, right? Keep in mind, like, you don't need to position it manually. You can link the vector material that is driving the position of these storm cloud. If you remember, you can link that with some blueprint and just make the blueprint also assign the position of this half sphere, right? So that can make things much easier. But in our purpose, like, we don't really care about it. We just want to focus on getting the right look, right? Because everything else is just yeah, it's not hard to do really if you're used to blueprints or stuff like that. Okay, so now we have this. Okay, so you can like play with the positioning. You can just maybe push it a little bit further. All right. So with that in place, let's create a material, which gonna call it let's say half, or let's say storm half sphere. Okay, you can name it whatever you want. All right. So in the blend mode here, usually you would use translucency, right? But the thing is, translucency is quite expensive, right? Especially with something that might occupy almost 30 to 40% of the screen, right? And if you're like just underneath it and you look up, most likely it will occupy all your screen, right? So how can we like make sure the borders uh, smoothly fade into the background without actually using translucency? Well, to do that, um, we can use masked blending, and then in the opacity mask, we can plug in some dithered noise. Okay, we will explore that in a bit. Now for the shading model, you can set it to unlit. And the reason for that is obviously we don't need to receive any light source or anything on this, right? Because we wanted to feel like some kind of another universe, and this is it's Portal, right? So it might look very weird if you have the sun uh, having its light affecting the sphere, right? We can, of course, take into consideration later on inside the shader the direction of the sun, okay? And we will later on probably because of some small details. We can do that, right? But for now, we will set it to unlit. So, and with that in place, let's handle the opacity mask part. So I'm gonna just use dither temporal anti-aliasing, and in the alpha threshold, I'm gonna use our vertex color. Okay, and then I'm gonna multiply this by dither intensity. Let's try to apply this here. Okay. So this is what you get, right? Let me just convert this to material instance, right? And I will try to control the contrast of this. I'm gonna say dither mask contrast. So with this in place, we can open our material instance and control the parameters. All right. Let me just move this here, remap it between 0 and 1, and let's use our material instance. And as you can see, we can control what you might call the opacity of the border, right? And as you can see, it smoothly blends. Obviously there is noise, right? As you can see, it looks like noise. But later on, when we add, our effect and stuff like this, it would not look like this. And also, as you can see here, it smoothly blends with the background without actually using translucency, right? So yeah, I just gonna push this, that, make sure it is above the clouds. Right? Yeah, this works great. Yeah, we will leave it like this. This is right values. One additional thing is you might still see this hard edge from our current angle, right? Like you can see this line here, which is a bit disturbing really. So you might say, well, I wish like this part would smoothly blend like this, right? So it's very simple. All you have to do is just do like we can take the camera vector and do a dot product with the vertex normal, right? And then based on that result, we can choose to dither that area or not. So we can use the Fresnel node for this and just promote this to parameter, and you can just multiply it. I'm gonna call this f dither exponential. Now you can multiply it here. I'm gonna just make sure to specify that the normals are the vertex and normal world space, right? Just a good practice there. It will by default use this, but I always want to specify what normals I want to use here. All right, now with that in place, let's just control this. All right, well, we are getting the opposite result, so all we have to do is just invert this using 1 minus. I'm gonna say 1 minus. All right, and as you can see, we're already getting something. All right, let's just try to move it down so things comes much clearer. All right. So I guess this is much smoother. If you were to place it here, you can always like add more control here. So I'm just gonna say f dither multiplier. Hope this one would be enough. Okay, so yeah, I guess this should do it. This definitely should be enough. All right. So I guess we're done with this part, right? If you look closely, you see like all the edges that might break our effect are gone, right? It's just smoothly blending into the background, right? And if you look very closely, you can see the noise, right? You can see something is not really, you can see something is up here, right? But that's much better than having, you know, a straight hard line, right? And the cost of this, like if you look at the shader complexity, you'll see this is insanely cheap. Like if you wanted to get the same thing using translucency, like you will just take the shader complexity much higher. So yeah, this should do it for this part, right? We handle the opacity mask. Next part we will add more of the effects, so we can reach the result I shared earlier.